Good. Good on that. All right, call to order the Board of Library Trustees Committee of the Whole for Monday, November 7th, 2022. Roll call, please.
Trustee Burrell is absent. Trustee Bella here. Trustee Meadow is absent. Trustee Rule is absent. Trustee Samari
Here.
Trustee Suplet.
Here.
President Zink.
Here. All right, any public comment? Any? So we will move on to item 1. Revisions to human resource policies.
Okay, could I ask Lisa Hack, our HR manager, to join us at the table? So this policy is to add holiday pay for benefited part-time employees. We had a very preliminary discussion about this during budget time. This would add 7 holiday days to any part-time staff member between 20 and 37 hours. Let's see. So we have 83 staff that fit that criteria. It's 39% of our staff. And we have an estimated cost on the second page of the memo, $57,356, which was budgeted in the 2023 budget. And, Lisa, do you want to speak to the policy or the changes?
Yeah, no, so when we spoke in September, kind of had our general conversation, and I appreciate your support, so thank you for that. So this is really bringing forward the policy itself and what the proposed changes would potentially look like. And I just wanted us to have an opportunity before we formally bring it forward to the board meeting in November for approval to sort of run through it and see what type of questions you may have. So going back to the memo really quickly, the details to note, we would be asking for this to be effective January 1st. So for the next budget cycle, as Mike alluded to, we did allocate for funds for this. The part-time benefit staff would essentially be receiving an additional 7 days of paid time off prorated based on their status. So a true benefit. And then how we're planning to administer the policy is consistent with how we administer paid holidays for our full-time staff as well. So trying to be consistent in administration. And then, so yeah, it's highlighted in red on the policy itself. You can see where we made some changes. So the first part, just bringing in with that the part-time benefited employees would receive paid holidays on the 7 holidays that the library is closed, as outlined previously. And then we called out that the paid holiday hours will be applied automatically on the actual holiday. And then the part-time benefited piece just talked about the proration, how we calculate proration.
I have a couple questions. Anybody have questions?
Go ahead.
Should I just go? Okay. All right. So first of all, what we're talking about here is right now the full-time employees, 37 and a half hours and up. They currently get out. Okay. We're not talking about the part-time less than 20 hours. We're talking about that middle. All right. Now, when I go over to the second page here, under currently the second bullet point, it says there are 7 holidays when the library is closed. If the library is closed, part-time benefit staff must use accrued vacation, personal time, or take the day unpaid. All right. When I look at the 7 days that are closed, let's take New Year's Day just for argument's sake, because that's the one that jumps around like Memorial Day, Monday, blah, blah, blah. What we're talking about with the part-time employees, and I may have asked this question in the past, if I did, I forgot to answer. Are they, even though they're part-time, are they scheduled for very specific days and times and slots? And the reason why I ask, because for me, part-time indicates an amount of flexibility in when they can be staff, when they can be working. So, or is it that they are almost kind of like full-time employees that boom, they've got 2 hours on this day, they got 3 hours on this day, they got 5 hours on this day, and their schedules never change.
So this particular group, that part-time benefited between 20 and 37 hours, the vast majority have static schedules. Now, the schedules may rotate, like, you know, it might be a 3-4 week rotation, something like that. But the vast majority of them do have standard schedules. I work every Monday, I work every Tuesday, you know, the kids roll, I run the story time, you know, every other week, things like that. So they are, for the most part, scheduled. Weekend rotation, same thing, very scheduled. I work this weekend, I work X amount of Saturdays, I work X amount of Sundays, things like that.
And there's no way to, again, just using New Year's Day, if there's scheduled to do work on New Year's Day, that they couldn't be moved to another day that week to pick up however many hours, or is that flexibility just not built in the system?
Depends on the department. It's not consistent across, because every team has a little bit different needs
Yeah.
in terms of the desks and the different operations that they have to run on different days. So there's not a consistent way to make it consistent, I guess.
They can't always flex enough
Yeah.
to be able to get everybody to make up those hours. During those pay periods.
Okay, I'd ask one more question, point blank. Do we try?
Yeah.
We do. Okay.
And there are some teams that absolutely do, 100%. There's some that can't, because if they were to flex someone to another day, then they're ending up overstaffed.
Mhm.
Like, we have more people here than we need, because otherwise they're taking somebody else's hours away from them to put that person in that spot.
You see what I'm trying to get here, is I want to see them get paid, and that's not my issue. My issue is we also want to get the work, you know, for the pay too, but obviously holidays come up. So, okay, that's my questions.
I guess my question is, do you have a payroll system that will help you manage this? Because it's a complicated puzzle that you created.
We've had a lot of conversation about that exact topic. Yeah, so the way we're proposing administering it is that the staff get paid on the actual holiday, and after looking at a variety of different options, that actually administratively for both the management staff and the business office staff is actually the simplest, because we can schedule our timekeeping system to just say, on this holiday, drop this many hours onto the time.
Yeah, did you know
Right.
that? Good.
Go ahead.
Just, and that's if the employee was scheduled to work on that day. right?
So
Or
that
no
was-
matter what.
Yeah, the way it's written now, we are asking no matter what, because part of what we had talked about before is, certain ways we can help become an employer of choice and retain these part-time staff, because we have so many public service staff that have to
Right.
be manned for so many hours. You have to have part-time people. So is it a possibility? Only those who were scheduled to work? Yes, but then you run into some inequities of, well, you got that holiday, but I don't get that holiday. And, we use the makerspace as an example. It currently, as things stand right now, it's not open on Monday or Friday. So if a holiday falls on Monday, Friday, like their staff wouldn't have the option, so that's just one example. But so that's kind of after playing around a bunch of different ideas, we felt that this was really enacting it in the true sense of being able to give it as an expense.
I would say I worked toward the end of my career downtown. I worked 3 days a week and I definitely got prorated holidays. I think it's something we should do, especially because we do have so many people in that. 20 to 37, and I know darn well if someone's out sick or maybe someone's on maternity, some of those people step up their hours. I'm sure that happens.
Absolutely.
If they can work a little more during the school year and a little less during the summer. So, this seems like a very reasonable policy and I like how well thought out it is. And I like the fact that, we already put it into our budget for next year. We already allocated it for it. And I think it's a good thing.
Another question. So employees who work on holidays, do they get paid time and a half, double time?
So the federal holidays were closed, and that's
Right.
generally the ones that you would see something like that. The holidays that were open are MLK, President's Day, Juneteenth, Veterans Day, which are, well, they're federal holidays, they're a little more of the fluid ones, I guess. I don't know what the right term is.
So it's regular time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions or comments? Okay.
Well, then we will clean this up. We did already send it for attorney review and they didn't have any additional questions, so we'll just finish that and I crossing the Ts and get it to you formally for the board meeting.
One, maybe just a couple of other things. What is the, I don't, if it's in here, I was just reading it over again to make sure I didn't miss it. What do other libraries do? Like other libraries?
There's a variety. They do all the different things. So, there are a good number of libraries that, just pay, a lot of them do pay holidays for part-time staff. The ones that I spoke to, there's not a ton of Jones, I got the number in my.
Kind of a small.
Thank you. I'm like, I knew I wrote it down here somewhere.
Oh, I'm using it.
Yeah, and, it's the how it's administered is a little bit different, you know, every place administers a little bit different based on their own particular needs and budget.
Gotcha, okay. Okay, all right. You good on that one? Any more questions on that one? All right, good stuff. Let's go on to, item 2, then, new human resource policy, parental leave.
Okay. So this one, another one of the things I want to mention about both of these is, you know, these are meant to continue to establish us as an employer of choice, but the idea for these policies really came from the staff. And they were mentioned to me when I was shadowing and when I go to department meetings, it was mentioned in the employee engagement survey numerous times. So this is something that both of these are things that have been asked for. And so I just want you guys to understand where these are originated from. Yeah, so the next one, parental leave for birthing parents, at least I'm just gonna hand it back. You can,
He keeps wanting to call it paternity leave instead of.
I do.
Yeah, so again, we had the conversation before, everybody seemed supportive, so I appreciate that so much. Actually, nothing changed since our last conversation, so I'll just do the quick review of the details to note on the, I guess it's page 3 of the memo then. This would be for full-time staff and part-time benefited staff who meet FMLA criteria as we define it here. And then we did outline some specifics about needing to use it consecutively within 6 months. We are requesting 100% of budgeted hours. They're paid 100%. And we did outline in the section above that in the proposal did talk about what the estimate cost would be. So over a 9-year period, we averaged out 2.3 leaves per year for a cost of approximately $13,000 to $14,000.
can you talk a little bit about the difference between budgeted hours and scheduled hours,
Yeah.
just so we're clear?
Oh, yeah, sorry,
That was
thank you,
my
thank you. No, no,
question.
no. So budgeted hours is how much we officially have you working. Scheduled hours can vary. So maybe somebody is taking vacation, so I'm gonna pick up an extra shift. So this week, you know, my normal budget hours might be 20 hours, but because I'm picking up and covering for vacation, my schedule might be 24 this week. So,
Or sometimes
or
the schedules
vice
they
versa.
might rotate
Right.
schedules, so they.
yeah, if
might
I'm
do
working
40
weekend,
hours one week and then, 10 the next or something like that. We would pay this as what's budgeted. So if it's a 20-hour position, it's 20 hours per week.
for each of those weeks, yeah. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So then this is the drafted policy. Again, just wanted to get in front of you for any questions.
Yeah, my first observation is, I don't think you can do this for parental leave without doing it for caregiver leave as well. For example, if my spouse or parent goes into hospice, I would request caregiver leave to be with that person during that period of time. Which I think is in the same spirit of parental leave.
You are very up on your HR trends. So, yes, that is kind of the next up and coming gaining momentum in
Well,
the HR world.
Well, and I would say, I would take it a little further than that. It is, I don't think you can do it without being discriminatory, quite frankly. And if we're going to be inclusive in this sense, you're gonna have to rework your numbers.
Okay.
Now, I would talking, you can't really guess it as, or plan on it as easily necessarily, but it does change the math. And you then have to put parameters around it. So caregiver leave for me could be very different than one of my colleagues. Like I said, hospice, because to me, it's the most evident version of caregiver leave, but it's not the only. And now you're down a slippery slope because you can't be kind of pregnant. So, good luck with that.
Yeah, so I can give you a little bit of knowledge. So most of our people who take time off for caregiver leave there, many of them are able to flex their schedules so that they don't necessarily, they can just switch their days. Many of them are taking leave of absence intermittently. So maybe I just need 1 or 2 days this week and then no time for another 2 weeks and I need a whole week off, things like, so there is much more variation to the need we have for that we've seen so far.
But that's by necessity because we don't have a policy in place that would allow it to be any other way but that.
Well, we have FMLA, so this is just talking about how you're getting paid
Right.
essentially while you're
Oh,
on
yeah.
FMLA.
Right.
So everybody, for caregiver leave, you would qualify for FMLA and that, so we do have some general idea of who needs the quantity of time. It has to do with how you're getting paid while you're on
Right.
FMLA.
I also thought about that when reading this. But I don't know that we can't start with child care leave. I don't know. I completely understand what you're saying, trustee Suplet, but at the same time, I do think the flexibility, if you're caring for someone with, maybe that's going through chemo, you don't want the whole week or 2 weeks off. You might want to jerry rig it so when they're getting their chemo, but then they're not, or yeah, there's just a lot. And that's difficult to say, okay, child, parent, is it, hospice or cancer, or then you're getting into what disease is worthy. I don't know. That's a little tricky. I will say in reading this, I liked the fact that you, that this encourages or asks people to take this leave in the first 6 months, because I think it could be tricky to say perhaps a dad or a mom, or I don't know, that could be a little tricky. I like the fact that this is really when childcare is the most demanding.
It is, and the research has shown that being able to take that time paid at the beginning has the most impact to the benefit of the family unit overall, as well as the satisfaction of the employee and their likelihood to return to work.
So, first of all, I'll go back to the comment I made when we talked about this in September. For me personally, this is a no-brainer. Especially when we're talking about the money here, as far as the policy. But the issue that I have, you got to think about, because I truthfully didn't even go down that path when I was thinking about it. How does that look? You said in FMLA, and we're referencing FMLA in here. It's part of that, okay? If we only take out a portion of that and say we're paying for this, does it put us into any kind of legal area, gray area that somebody can come back and say, well, wait a second, we're doing it for that area, we need to do it for this area too.
In the conversations I've had with attorneys, this is very appropriate, very standard, and perfectly acceptable. We do offer a lot of ways for people to take time off when they need it for whatever life issues. And my understanding, again, from the attorneys I've talked to is each employer is allowed to make their own decision about how they make it happen. It's about, are you working with your employee to try and find, to collaborate with them, and be interactive and say, hey, let's find a way to make this work. That's legally what's expected. How far beyond that we take it is up to us as an employer.
But we could definitely talk to our attorney about that, just make sure that we're not putting ourselves in a legal situation. Sure. I mean, it sounds like you've already talked with them, at least some.
Okay. All right, so if we can just, when this comes to the board next week, a funny month. First Monday's today and the third Tuesday tomorrow next week. But anyways, yeah, if we can just kind of just verify all that. And I agree with you. I think these are two separate things. I think one, we should focus on this one. Let's get this one taken care of. As long as you find out that we're not in jeopardy. And then let's look at how we put together for the care groups. Too. That makes sense. That makes sense?
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay.
Any other questions?
All right. Thank you.
So much.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
You do the job of like 20 people. So.
Some days it feels like.
Right. Okay, let's go on to item 3, revisions to policy 1.101, rules of the board of library trustees.
Okay, so at the September board meeting, there was a suggestion to add the pledge of allegiance to our board agendas. And so I'm bringing that tonight to discuss. That would be reflected in policy 1.01. I'm sorry, 1.1.0. You know,
Good one.
You know,
1.101, rules of the Board of Library Trustees. This would add pledge of allegiance to the order of business at all regular meetings. You can see the summary in the memo, but then if you look on page 4, that's where it actually would sit in the policy. So I will open that up for discussion. This is something new.
regular meetings, but the cow isn't considered a regular meeting.
It's a regularly scheduled meeting. Yeah.
Do we have this as a regular?
Yeah.
That's what board meetings are only. Okay. Fine.
Okay, where's the flag?
Yeah, we've got one. If we, approve this at the next meeting, then we would, if we don't have that flag in time, we do have others.
We got more there. And after the roll call, that's the most common place.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, and I compared that to Park District, and where they put theirs and those same spots.
I was just thinking before the roll call, but I guess it will make a difference. Okay, that's, you good? Okay.
Like it.
Okay,
Thank
right
you.
on. All right, item 4, the Illinois Public Library per capita grant requirements.
Yes, so it is that time of year again where we are going to be applying for the per capita grant. Per capita grant is an annual grant that we receive through the state of Illinois or the Illinois Public Library. As part of that requirement, the board and certain staff have to read the Serving Our Public 4.0 standards for Illinois Public Libraries, and which I believe all of you have a copy of, correct? Okay, all right. So
The cover.
yes, I think there's an audio book now too. So what you have here is just the application that we'll be filling out. We'll bring this back to the December committee of the whole meeting. But between now and maybe a month from now, you all could go ahead and read through that book once again. I appreciate it. Let me know if you have any questions on anything, but we will bring back at the December committee of the whole meeting a draft application with everything filled in, and then we have further discussion. If there's anything. Full bulk, yeah, they started that, I think.
I must point that out. Because
Good job.
reading it every year.
Is this available in our collection?
I don't know. I don't know. It's probably in our professional collection, available to staff, but
Maybe I
not.
can get you a copy if you are.
That might be helpful.
Okay.
I'm sure I'm sure I know where it is, but. What's the time frame?
By next month, next December committee.
If it was by next May, you'd be okay.
And so I don't think the grant is actually, or the application's not due until the end of January. So if you, need another month or something to read that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You on that one?
Good on that.
And we are going through this more quickly. Item 5, okay, policy .7007, use of flag on library property discussion. What I want to bring up is we kind of talked about this during the last meeting. And just to solidify, if that's the right word, this policy just a little bit more, and I know it's probably going to go into the the statements, the resolutions. I swear, my brain today. There's three things that I'm thinking about that I think we need to add though to this policy for the use of flags. You know, we had, you know, it was obviously brought up for a certain subject, and we did try it the other time, and we had some hiccups. Okay. So I think there's a couple of things, or three things I think that we need to, as trustees, and this is a trustee thing, right? That's being brought in. It's not being brought from outside. There's three things I think we need to do to kind of firm this thing up a little bit. One is the trustee that's bringing it up needs to document the flag. And this isn't, we're just discussing it actual, and we can come up with a format or form or whatever of exactly what that flag looks like. Okay, and have it prepared for everybody as it comes forward. Have documentation also that the flag has been flown. That has been flown over a government facility that's actually been used before. And the other one, document, because in the policy, we're basing it on that there is already been used by the U.S. and the state of Illinois, that there's been a proclamation that, or the National Heritage Month or something like that, is come up with, and have that documentation too for all of us.
Wait, is that different than that the flag has been flown? Or do you mean just flown it somewhere, but not flown in a? I guess I'm misunderstanding what what's different between 2 and 3.
So that one is that the flag has been flown.
Like at the Capitol or at the state of Illinois?
Maybe a better way to say it is that I should have switched these two. You know, document that a statute of proclamation has been made. Okay, stating that flag is a flag that's government recognized. Okay, and then after that, the flag has actually been flown over one of those over a government area. And one of the things I'm trying to do is, as you all know my thoughts on this, I'm very simply just want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves and that we're doing that we're doing everything the right way. Another thing that we've got to be careful of, and this happened during one of the meetings, or a few of the meetings actually. We've all done it. We've all done it to a certain degree. We've taken out our phones because we didn't know the answer to it, and we started doing research on our phones within the meeting. We can't be doing that, because if we get to a point ever that we're having to research things in a meeting right here, we don't know enough about the vote on it. So we kind of have to back up a little bit. So those are the three things that I'm offering that we should include into the policy. So any thoughts, comment?
My first thought is that you don't need to put it into the policy, that this is a practice. I think they're good practices and one ought to do that. I think what your practice is missing is the check and balance. So for example, John has a great idea and he pursues it with vigor. And he comes forward to the group and he says, I've done my homework, but there's nobody there to check their homework. So I'm more inclined to say that it can't be a single member of the committee that's doing it. It has to be one or more, or two or more. The reason being is that way, I have to demonstrate that I have in fact done my research and it has been verified by somebody else before we bring it to the table for the group's consideration. So in essence, we have a motion and a second before we come to you, but it's also done a little more rigorously than it has been done in the past.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, even bringing it to a committee of the whole and saying, I have this documentation, I passed it, whatever, distribution, could you take a look at it, and then come back at the next, either, the next board meeting where we need to vote, and if it needs to be even to another discussion committee of the whole. I mean, I think we can know in advance enough, just to have that time to be able to go over it, You know, and not even just the onus on two people, but that it's a group decision and to be able to come back fully informed and be able to ask questions as a group.
Yeah, I think you're unmarking that there needs to be structure to this process. I don't think making it a policy is the best avenue for that, but we can add structure to the process by making, I mean, quite honestly, designing a form that a member of the board has to complete in advance to present to the committee on the whole for its consideration.
Mhm.
And, you know, what the elements of that form are is what's contained in that policy, that it's, you know, it's a National Heritage Month, it's by proclamation of executive order. The flag has been flown or will be flown on either federal or state government buildings. I mean, the elements, I think, my point is the elements in the policy are there. What I was sloppy, which was the practice, and what we need to, you know, safeguard ourselves against is that practice, and that, I mean, really, literally a form where where one might submit it to the president for consideration to then put it on the agenda for the next cow.
You know, first I want to say something to the comment you just made, but you being sloppy. You weren't being sloppy, you were a guinea pig. Because we hadn't done it before. And until we do that, we don't know. We don't know what's going to go on because the whole structure and the way it was. What I'm going to disagree with, though, forgive me, but I think it needs to be part of the policy, the procedure. The reason why is that there's going to come a time when these 7 people are not going to be on this board anymore.
Right.
And we need to make sure that it's locked in, that they know that everybody knows what's expected and where they're going.
Yeah, and I think maybe the form that I'm using loosely could be incorporated into that policy, the form itself, the request,
Procedure.
the request itself in the organization of the form can be incorporated into that policy, and in that sense, it does bring that structure that is necessary in order to protect the individuals that are making the decisions, and then following through on them.
Okay, so I'm sorry, you have something?
I was just gonna ask a question. So, I mean, I really like this idea. I like bringing it to a committee of the whole meeting first and presenting, I mean, you know, a photocopy of what the flag looks like, what the proclamation, the history. But another thing that was in our policy, I took a picture of it today, but I did it on my iPad. It was if the library is having programming related to it. And I guess, so is that a situation where someone could say, call up the executive director and say, Mike, can you please tell me in the next 3 months, is there special programming for Gay Pride Month, Juneteenth, Women's History, whatever it is? Because that was part of our consideration, is whether or not the library is going to support it with programming.
Yeah,
I mean, it would just be something I would want to know, like I wouldn't
Sure.
want to bring up some flag. I don't know, that we don't have any programming or background or.
I mean, I agree with your point. I mean, truth of the matter is, we do programming for everything. I mean, that's really our lane, right? Is the programming. It's not a flag, it's not a resolution,
Right.
really. Our lane.
Education is through the programming.
And that's really what our lane is. But if I would say that what you're asking, though, that comes up to the specific trustee and whether or not they want to bring it forward. If you as a trustee want to bring something forward, and you see that there is no programming that's coming up that in that particular month, that's really up to you to make that decision on whether you want to bring.
I
it up.
guess, but what I'm asking is, so I don't know what programming is coming up in June. But I'm not gonna wait until June to bring up a Juneteenth flag, like, or I'm just using that as an example, just anything like. You know, I clearly programming is working on things way in advance, as is marketing to market it and so forth. So I guess I'm just wondering how that would work. It'd be interesting to kind of know, yeah.
So, as you guys know, we have our IDEA team. It's a work group. We've created a subcommittee of that to advise on the heritage months that will be
Oh.
planning in advance. Which ones we'll be recognizing, how we'll be recognizing it. And has members of programming, info services, communications, marketing. You know, like all of the relevant departments that it might be a display case, it might be a book list, it might be a, book display out there. Might be obviously programming. There's a number of different things on the website. So we're trying to make sure everything's cohesive, and we'd like to prepare something and provide it to the board in advance, so you guys can look at, this is what the next 12 months looks like.
Right.
And this is what we'll be programming on, so you can then say, okay, well, we might fly a flag for this, one. We might do something
Right.
else for this one. So I think that,
That makes.
I think
a lot
that's kind of
sense.
what you're
That's
getting
what I'm thinking of. Like, I wouldn't want to propose something that the library has no application for or whatever.
Yeah. So, I recall the part of the policy to which you're referring, and I think, that's an important component of why that's in the policy, is to make sure that it is, part of the library's mission and the programming. The one thing that I would just like to point back is the initial component of that policy does, require that government, or state recognition of that flag, and that was to keep us on the legal end of things,
Right.
because we are flying on the same flagpole and monitoring and watching and being respectful of the US flag code. So if we had a second flagpole, I think with programming, we could be a lot more lenient in being able to fly or banners or something that was not on that singular flagpole with the US flag. So that would be my only caution, is that in this, that we're not deviating from the original flag policy, and that's the reason that part was the
Right.
first one. So,
I just want to point out, you make a very good point. But it wasn't because it's on the same flagpole as the US flag. It's because any flagpole, or if you put it on the building or whatever, becomes a public forum. And so
Yes,
if you
okay.
fly one, you pretty much have to fly them all.
even on the building,
On the building, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so, so that's why the board looked for some list or something that we could point to and say, these are the ones that we're selecting. And so that's why that criteria was being used. So even if we have a second flagpole, the same rules apply.
Even, so the building one, that
Yeah.
is surprising,
Oh,
so,
I mean, let's just
Where-
think if you have, like on your house, you've got the stand that holds the flag and you put the wood thing in there. Now that's on your building. It doesn't have to be pressed against the brick. It's
I'm just thinking to other entities or other
Yeah.
agencies that have flown things, and I'm trying to go through, like, has it been as, flying everything? So then how would you propose moving around that? I mean, that would be my concern, is that then you get into that argument of flying everything when we're not, again, looking at that first component of the flag policy.
So I think you can marry that. Like, there are other flags that the government flies that we haven't flown and have been proclaimed and all, is that what
Well,
you
a
mean?
proclamation is different than, I guess, federally or state recognized, right? To be
No.
flown on
Well, we're saying it's an
Veterans
executive
Days.
order of the president,
an executive
The
order,
governor,
right, or the governor.
the flag, there was a proclamation, there just wasn't a flag for
Correct.
that proclamation.
Right,
Okay,
the flag exists, but well, and you break it down, the 574 tribes across the nation don't recognize themselves under a single flag. And so they end up agreed upon a flag to represent 564 nations.
Yeah.
But that's use of flags.
Yeah.
And that's not resolutions, and we need to do that too.
Right, so, one thing, if I can just take, we'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to the second. So here's what I'd like to propose for the flag policy for next week is let me work on a draft on a form that puts down the items that we talked about. I like your idea of, putting part of it in there that we need to bring to a committee of the whole first. And then we vote then we vote out of the step, we can set the steps up. John had mentioned the idea of before that you can get to that step though of having two trustees look at it before going through. We can put that in as part of the policy, or does that just become a best practice type of thing?
I think that's a best practice, because if we're bringing it to the committee of the whole, and that's going to be done at the committee of the whole, I would suggest that that's the best practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any thoughts there?
I'd say be careful about documenting that the flag has been flown, because now you're using language that is suggestive of evidence. And are you looking, what kind of documentation is it that one is looking for? I mean, what we're suggesting already is that it already has to be a National Heritage Month as by executive order of the president. That's documentation. This seems to be redundant with that.
Okay, I actually understand what you're talking about. Am I looking for evidence? Yeah. I mean, when you were evident, evidence, I was looking for that, but if I think this is what you're saying, is that if it's already, the proclamation has already been made and there is a flag, that should be enough regardless of any other government entity that's flown it yet. That's enough to
Well,
forward.
I thought we had I thought the policy, can you pull up the policy? I thought it said that the flag had to have already been flown. I could be wrong though.
no, but we've got two steps here. The first is that it's Alaska Native, American Native, and Hawaiian Native is a great example of that, where it is a National Heritage Month by executive order, but there is no flag that represents what that is.
Mhm.
And that's the case of many National Heritage Months. So it's one thing to say that it's been identified as a National Heritage Month by executive order. It's another to say that there is that executive order recognizes that there is a flag. So those are, to me, those are two,
But it kind of needs to be.
right?
I mean, I don't think it had the one without the
And
other.
well, that's, oh no, they're most of the month are, don't have flags.
I'm talking about for us though.
Yeah, for us, right, and that's what my point is, that whatever it's
Recognize. the
form.
flag. Yeah.
Me.
Yeah, 'cause you're close.
I just- No, I just got a question. So when I was thinking of banner, I meant like even on the inside or flat, so anything even from, so I feel like we've had like.
Well, we have
is it-
banners that promote things, like think about, we had a
Right.
lovely banner for One Book, One Village.
Right, well, yes, that's,
But
I know, but I'm thinking like, so even in display in the library for programming, by putting any sign of a flag, that would be. That's
No, I think that's a little different. It's not, if you're promoting,
outside, that's what I guess, and
doesn't matter if it's inside or outside. When you fly a flag on public property, it becomes
okay,
a public forum. And this is what Roger came and talked about, the limited public forum versus public forum. And so if we have a program about, I don't know, some subject, and there's a flag that's associated with it, we're flying that flag as part of that program. We could say, well, that flag is helping promote that program.
okay,
We probably wouldn't fly it in our front windows or on a
Right.
flagpole, but But you could tie it back to that and say that's why we're flying that, and therefore, we're not gonna fly this flag, even though you've requested it, because it's not part of the program.
Okay,
So there is a little bit of.
I think that's what I was thinking of as far as like inside the building too. Really nuanced here, so thank you. for sharing.
So you're right. It doesn't say that we have had, that the flag has been flown.
No, I'll say, I think this is really well written. Because it allows you on the flexibility you need in order to make an informed decision. And with 7 people helping contribute to that decision, it gives a lot of input. So, you know, there's a lot of oars in there, and I think that's a good thing. But ultimately, there has to be a connection between the executive order or proclamation that establishes the National Heritage Month and a flag, if one exists. And you're right, Greg, one of us needs to be able to demonstrate to the group that that connection exists if the intention is to fly a flag. If the intention is to pass a resolution, well, that's actually covered in there. Now it's a matter of what form that resolution takes.
Okay, so. Is everybody good with what I proposed to do for the policy? I'll bring it to the meeting next week. And we'll show it to everybody, to kind of writing all this up and with the form and the format and everything. We can talk about it next week.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want it in the form of an action.
We can just be a discussion.
Yeah.
That's fine. It could just be another item discussion.
Yeah.
If everybody's okay with that.
Yes.
Do you want to continue this discussion at the committee of the whole, or do you feel it's ready to bring to the board?
Well, as soon as my work's gonna come up, would be nicer if we did to the committee of the whole, but that's, I will do that. Is everybody okay with that? The next committee of the whole? Okay. We'll do it at the next committee of the whole.
And find out what they did for Italian Heritage Month. Because they did it.
They
in
did.
October.
They did a resolution.
Yeah, but who broke that up?
Trustee brought that to the.
A trustee, really?
Yeah, and the way
Wow.
they do it with resolutions is it can be initiated by a trustee or a community member. Then there's, you know, I think Randy checks with the trustees unless there's
Right.
objection, they'll bring that forward.
So is that included in their policy?
There's no.
No, I don't believe so.
Oh, there is.
In policy.
So it's basically a public comment at the beginning of the meeting if you wanted to.
Essentially. So I mean, it's, yeah, from my understanding, yeah, Randy and the mayor will have a discussion. About bringing it forward to one of their board meetings on whether.
Then in the context of the resolution. We were okay. We were consistent with our policy
Yeah,
Sure,
within the context of that resolution.
if we're going to do this, I will tell you, I'm not. When I found out the village doesn't really have a policy on it, it goes back to my same fears that I talked about with flag policy. Is I want to make sure
Yeah.
that we're doing this the right way, but I don't want to do too, what I do not want to do too is I do not want to put a burden on staff.
Right,
All of a sudden now we're getting once a day, request for this particular type of resolution. And these resolutions, too, one thing we got to consider is that a flag is a flag,
right,
one thing. A resolution has a number of bullet points in there that
Right.
have to be factually correct and
Right.
checked.
Right.
So that is definitely something that needs more than one
Fact check.
person. Who needs to be fact checked and need to do that. And my biggest fear is that's going to fall on the staff to make sure that they do that.
but that's why I laugh when what was, you're saying Bertucci is the one
well,
that did it.
I'm not.
But let's just say, who checked his facts?
Well-
And where did that parchment come from? They had, I mean, it was a really nice parchment. It wasn't, typing paper or.
They
I would-
tweeted it out too, but I would maybe, you could be a member of some group that could provide you with a proclamation pretty easily.
Yeah,
Like, I don't think someone probably wrote that. But it was interesting to me that the village tweeted it out. I don't know.
Yeah, they've been putting all that stuff.
It just
on
seems
social
like
media.
there's a lot of different ethnic nationalities in Arlington Heights. It just.
No, it was a National Heritage Month.
Well, yes, I'm sure it was, but it just seems like there's more than just one. I don't know.
There's a finite number. I mean, there is a finite number, and so it begs the question, well, why did they choose that one?
Yeah. I
Well,
guess
they didn't, an individual did when he brought them to the group. And a majority concurred. That's the long and short of it.
Yeah.
Now, how do you put control over that? You can only do that to a degree,
Unless you just keep it along the lines of what we've just done,
right,
what we've done here.
right,
I mean, we have those controls over it.
and talk about it during the committee of the whole.
There, talk about the committee of the whole, and there is going to be a necessary check. Some use your phrase before check and balances
Right,
to make sure that factually everything is on that.
gotcha, yeah.
Mhm.
It's a good thing that we're a library where they got that kind of stuff going on.
We got good
You got
fact
people.
checkers.
But we don't want to put the burden on the staff. That's a whole other thing.
But as a resident of the community, I can. I'm not saying. But that's what,
You
that,
can do the fact checker.
yeah.
Well, you can ask the library.
I mean,
Yes, we can.
how many times you get the call for what are the name of the three wise? I mean,
Sure. You have volunteers to do the fact checking.
anyway,
So do you want to include resolution in that policy if you're going to modify that policy?
I'm thinking right now, let's get through the flag policy, because it sounds like we've got some questions that we still need to figure out here, if I'm reading them correctly. That we need to kind of figure out there. Let's get that figured out and then kind of mull this one over a little bit.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
yeah, in the end, I see this more as a practice than altering the policy. It's just, explaining to ourselves that we need to be disciplined in what we're doing.
Okay. Are you okay with that?
Mhm.
You good with that? Okay.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you all. All right, we're on to, this is a quick meeting. We're on to other. So really great fun today. So a couple of me things, we're gonna have the luncheon, right, for everybody.
We're gonna have what?
It's a luncheon for the staff, for
Oh,
the holiday
yeah.
luncheons, which is awesome. And we're starting to put up this week or next week, probably my favorite display, the arcade one.
Oh, wow.
So Donkey
Yeah.
Kong Junior, just so you know, I'm gonna be checking that one out at some point during this whole period. Just gotta make that statement.
Yes, that's me excited one.
It will-
Yeah.
Anything?
I do have one thing for other. I just want to give you guys an update on the survey for the strategic plan. So as of November 2nd, we had 3,667 responses from the public on our survey. So that is a fantastic response.
Yay.
We've got a mix of users and non-users, so it's good perspectives. Good ways. So we are doing really well.
What is it doing?
16.
16.
So we've got some time and, so it's only been up, a couple of weeks so far. And so it's,
Wow.
That's great.
it's successful. People are very invested in the
Yeah,
library. So just want to let you guys know that.
She knows it going.
very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
She was thinking, oh, maybe we get 1,200.
Yes. So very great.
Anything else? All right, and then we just have a motion for adjournment.
I move we adjourn the committee of whole of November 7th, 2022.
I second.
All in favor?